Yeah, so still over here doing a bunch of random stuff on this channel. Just being sick, man, and not being able to go out there and like skate and do the stuff that I normally do. Pretty, not my favorite thing, but been doing like replaying Zelda Ocarina of Time's been super fun. Streaming that's been like really surprisingly entertaining. I've never streamed before, so like interacting with everyone in the chat has been pretty cool and having them help me through the game because it's been a million years since I've played it. But we're gonna I was just scrolling around on Instagram and this guy was saying some wild facts that I was just like, oh, this is interesting. And I was telling someone about it and then like the conversation was amusing. So I was just like, I'm just gonna watch some more of them and then just record it. So maybe this isn't gonna be anything. But yeah, I'm gonna skip around on these guys' videos because I feel like if I just go through them chronologically, it sort of defeats the purpose of anyone going to this guy's Instagram and following him and seeing what else he has to do. So a good bit of skipping around and encouragement to go follow this guy. I don't know if he's fact checking this. Let's just assume that he is. Some of these things seem kind of wild, but yeah, these facts are all over the place. So we'll see what's up.
Insane War Tactics, Part 1. When going to battle against enemies riding elephants, the Indian Rajputs would put fake trunks on their horses, making them appear as baby elephants, which the enemy's elephants refused to attack.
I don't think I believe that one. Like right off the gate, that one just, well, no, I take that back. Like I'm sure it was something that was tried, but that wouldn't work, right? Like, I mean, I know that like the saying an elephant never forgets isn't because elephants never forget. It has to do with strings and tying their trunks to the elephant in front of them. I guess like when they do it when they're babies. So when they get bigger, when they're a baby, they can't break the rope, but when they're larger, they could. But since they remember that they couldn't before, they never try to break the rope and get free. That's what I heard that saying comes from. But like, they're not that stupid, right? Like a horse is clearly a different animal. And I don't think like any animal just looks for this one trait of itself and be like, yeah, that's us. That's for sure us. But yeah, I'm sure it was tried. I just can't imagine that actually working. Also, why are you bringing elephants into war? I mean, I get that they're big, but...
During the Cold War, CIA agents used a secret method of communication based on how their shoelaces were tied.
Okay, that one actually makes sense. I believe that one. I would have made an awful agent because I suck at tying my shoes.
In 1973, the U.S. Army developed an anti-tank grenade by hollowing out a Nerf football and filling it with explosive charges. But the ball never made it to the battlefield since the explosives gave it an unpredictable flight.
Of course, that thing would have bite marks out of it because that's what happens to all Nerf footballs for some reason and no one knows why. That's a real mystery. Someone should cover that. Why were there always bite marks?
The warships used to be painted like optical illusions. The purpose of this dazzle camouflage was not to conceal the ship, but rather to mislead the enemy by making the ship's speed and range more difficult to estimate. Much to the same effect as patterns seen on zebras, giraffes, and jaguars.
That's pretty sick. That makes sense. When it was like actual like eye-to-eye warfare, there was like so much like interesting strategic play. Like they were really just trying to like fuck with each other. Like there was like a amount of war that was just like trolling your opponent or just trying to confuse them. And I'm not saying that I miss those days. I'm not a fan of any war. But like you get these facts from the past and it's just like, oh, that was like clever. Or like, oh, that understands why they thought that was going to work. But like nowadays, everything's so exact. I imagine the future of the history books of like war right now will probably be like, yeah, so this guy pressed his button and then that's how they won. I'm also curious to see like, history is written by the winner, but like in this society where everything's being recorded and uploaded on the internet, I feel like there's going to be too much data and too many contradicting stories of what actually happened, which is, I think, like what's kind of happening now when people argue about politics, that no one's going to have any idea what actually happened. Like, yeah, the winners get to write history, but at least that's like a one track, like, here's what happened. But nowadays, it's going to be like, no one's going to have any idea what happened because this person's going to be like, oh, like, I won the war. You don't believe me? Check out my vlog about it. And then this government over here is going to be like, no, they fought dirty, and here's the evidence. And it's just going to be like some AI generated imagery or something like that. Like, I feel like at first glance, keeping track of history for the modern day seems like it's going to be the easiest to be accurate. But the more I think about it, the more I think it's not going to be. I think it's just going to be a bunch of bullshit. We can't even keep track with what's going on right now. Everyone's just lying about everything and skewing. And that's always been a part of history, but now we have the technology to make it even more believable. Shout out Flat Earth. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Morbid Facts, Part 2.
Morgan facts?
229. Morgan Freeman has an oddly dark reason for always wearing his gold hoop earrings. He says it's because they're worth just enough to pay for a coffin if he happens to die in a strange place. The
That's why do I feel like that's like it makes me think of that character in that 007 movie who he's like from New Orleans or something like that. I pronounce his name wrong because my remembrance of his name is trying to read it when I was 8 playing GoldenEye, so I probably would say like Baron Samedi or something like that, but I know that's not how you say his name. Correct me in the comments if anyone watches this video what his actual name is. But like that seems like a very old school New Orleans type of lore. There's just something about like that part of the country's myths, legends, and traditions that just like it's always like really clever. Like it's always like really well thought out and entertaining. I should probably like do a little bit more research on just like just that part of America because like what a wild history that place has. Okay, back to the video.
The most toxic natural substance on Earth is botulinum toxin, aka Botox. A couple pounds is all you would need to kill every single human being on the planet.
Huh? How's that a thing? Like what they put... Huh? Like if ingested? But because it goes under your skin, well then it will get into your bloodstream, no? There's gotta be like something else to this. Like I wish you would be like... do a little explaining. It kind of reminds me of like you can like take an apple and then take the seeds out and you can crush them up and you can get like what is it like arsenic or something like that, which is another thing that I don't know whether it's true or not because I've definitely swallowed apple seeds when I was a kid and then like panicked about it. I remember being a kid and like swallowing apple seeds and then like having like adults tell me like, oh, don't do that, like an apple seed will like grow in your stomach. And then later in my life I learned about the whole like if you crush it up it does this bad thing. Then I was like, oh, maybe that's why they told me that, because they knew that I could not comprehend this poison, but I could comprehend an apple tree because I'm a child. But then going even further into adulthood, I just realized that this is just adult fear mongering. I think you can actually crush it up real fine though and it's poisonous, but I think if you eat the seeds, it'll just give you a stomachache. Because there's no way that people would just be casually serving apples to the world knowing that like, oh, by the way, if you eat this one part, you're gonna fucking die. Or have a tree grow out of you.
African country of Ghana has 6 witch camps, housing about 1,000 women in total. The camps are for women accused of witchcraft to have a safe place to live without fear of being lynched by their neighbors. Most of the women simply suffer from mental illness, a poorly understood concept in Ghana.
Yeah, there's so many like things about the Salem witch trial that I've like learned about. Like I'm sure you've heard the theory of they think that these women who were like quote unquote witches, a lot of them were just like tripping balls off of some sort of like bacteria or fungus that was like growing on the bread that got into the water stream. But then at the same time you would think, well, wouldn't that get into like guys too? And all of a sudden there would be like a ton of guy witches. But then again, you got to take into consideration like, you know, the way women were treated back then. So it's just like, no, guys could be crazy. You're not a witch if you're just, this guy is just unhinged. You're a witch. And if you ever have the chance to do so or ever have some free time, I know everyone knows like just the smallest little bit about the Salem witch trials, or like, you know, you've seen the Blair Witch Project, or you just hear like little tales about it. Spend like a half an hour and go like read about like what actually happened and then try to comprehend, hey, this really did happen and we have like records showing that this stuff happened. And then think about how insane it is that people did what they did there. And there's that stuff happening all over the world all the time, even in today's day. But that particular story is just fucking wild. I'm sure there's an iceberg out there about the Salem witch trial. If not, maybe I'll make my first iceberg. Probably not, though. This is my Wendigoon style shirt, though, so maybe it's fate.
Sam White, a Civil War artifact collector from Virginia, was killed in 2008 when a 140-year-old highly explosive cannonball exploded in his driveway while he was restoring it. The blast was powerful enough to send chunks of shrapnel up to a quarter-mile away. White is now considered by some historians to be the last confirmed casualty of the American Civil War.
That is dark. That is dark to say that he's the last. I hate that. That reminds me of that. Have you seen that? It's like a graph of people dying on the Titanic, and then it's like, you know, it shows like a graph over the years, and it's like a huge spike when the Titanic sunk, and then it's just like nothing. But then when they just have those rich people go down that little sub, and then that imploded and they died, there's like a little extra blip because there's like 6 people in it or whatever. Like, you don't need to say that he died because of the Civil War. That is a freak accident. I'd also argue that if you count that as a death as a Civil War, then every single person who ever died of an argument over the Civil War, which evidently people are still really adamant about arguing about the Civil War and what it was fought over. And I'm sure people have died over those arguments also count as deaths of the Civil War. And they don't. They count as deaths over stupidity. I love people, but goddamn, people are the worst.
Morbid facts, part 228.
Stephen Colbert.
Talk show host Stephen Colbert lost his father and 2 brothers in a plane crash when he was 10 years old. Stephen was the youngest of 11 kids, so he was around his mom the most and took it upon himself to cheer her up. and that's what got him into comedy.
I wonder if that's true. Like, I wonder if, like, just being around such a somber world kind of forces someone to either collapse under the pressure or try to go the opposite direction and be the kind of cure-all towards sadness, which, in my opinion, is comedy. It's not a cure-all in the sense that it's more of like a numbing paste. Like when you're really sad and then you like someone makes you laugh, you do laugh and you're like removed from it. It's almost like a drug. You're like, oh yeah, no, like I feel good in this moment. And then the second the laughing's over, you kind of fall back into it. Because really the only cure for depression is really sorting through it and figuring out what exactly is ailing you. And then sort of, I mean, in my experience, I sort of organize things in my head to where it makes the most sense. Like, this is why I feel the way this is. And I will over analyze and explain the situation to myself in a way to where it becomes almost like data, which is a little bit easier to digest. And then it makes me a little bit better at dealing with my emotions because I have a stronger understanding of them. But like when you're really down in the dumps and you need a break, like 100%, like go be with some funny friends or something like that, because it just gives you a chance to breathe. It's not going to fix it, but like you need those little oases and islands away from being sad to have enough energy to handle the next day and slowly work your way out. Because once enough time passes, that's that much more time for you to figure it out and get to the other side. So yeah, any sort of sad, depressing, you lost someone, you're just down, whether it's a chemical thing, whatever it is, time doesn't heal all wounds, but it is the main ingredient. Make sure you stock up on it because I don't sell it at the grocery store.
Last year, a 45-year-old Belgian man faked his own death before showing up to his own funeral in a helicopter. He was apparently saddened that his family had grown apart and thought that the stunt would bring them closer together. Helen Keller, the first...
What? That is the most unhinged, like, thing I've ever... What? Like, lying to fix things is never the move, but to, like, break everyone's heart and then to not only break everyone's heart. Okay, it's one thing to break everyone's heart and then just be like, oh, like, I'm trying to teach you a lesson. The showing up on a helicopter, like the fact that you have to add a little pizzazz to your ruining everyone's life is insane. Like, he literally was like, no, like, I'm trying to bring my family together. But then the helicopter rolls and he's like, but it's really about me. Like, he definitely did that because he expected it to be like, oh my God, we miss you so much. I'm so glad you're alive. Like, that guy probably had like legitimate castaway Tom Hanks fantasies where he's like, I just want to get stranded on an island. Everyone thinks I'm dead and then come back. And then they're all so happy to see me. And my wife definitely doesn't remarry. And I don't have a toothache because that part looked like it would suck. Like, there's really shitty people in the world, obviously. But that dude who did that is like, he makes the list of one of the shittier people. I know he didn't kill anyone or whatever, but to have your shit together enough to be able to construct a plot to do this and then get a helicopter and show up shows me that you probably have enough mental capacity to understand how much damage you would also be doing to people to get your point across. What a guy. Okay, Helen Keller. Is there any Helen Keller deniers? Comment down below, because there's valid reason to be. I'm not saying, but I am saying, let's watch this fact.
Deafblind person in the U.S. to earn a college degree had a complicated relationship with disabilities. She fully supported the policies of the eugenic movements, arguing that badly disabled children were better off euthanized.
I think it's easy to look at a statement like that back then and be like, yeah, that is insane, especially since she's like this successful case. And that'd be a way more morbid fact if she was faking the whole thing. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying she was. But I imagine the life of people back then who had these like really insane disabilities was possibly just a straight up horror movie. I mean, now we have so much stuff to take care of these people, and we have so much, not just progress in technology, but like progress in like understanding the way people work and the human mind and how to engage these people, give them a life worth living. And there wasn't even that much study back then to even do that. And I could be completely wrong. Maybe, stuff was sick for them back then, but I can't imagine it being that great for not just them back then, but just people in general. I 1,000% have my complaints about the way that the world is laid out right now in Western civilization, and there's things that I would love to change. But that does not mean that I'm not insanely grateful when I just look back a few years at the past and the life that like even some of the older Gen X's grew up in, and I'm like, oh man, I dodged a bullet. Don't get me wrong, a lot of politics that I'm like not a fan of, but if you go back 20 years, there's just a lot more to not be stoked on. But now that I think about it, Helen Keller, I don't know the length of the capacity of what she could and couldn't do. If she couldn't do it. But I wonder like how she even learned about all this stuff, because I imagine her learning curve or her learning process took longer than someone who can see and hear. So I'm sure she learned about the way that other people were treated, but at the same time in her own story, maybe she was just like, this is insanely difficult. Or maybe she just looked at her own life and just like, this just isn't worth it for anyone. I don't know. That's a whole crazy subject.
With the Powerball approaching $1 billion yet again, here are some reasons why winning the lottery isn't always so great. In 1999, a Florida waitress was tipped a lottery ticket and won $10 million from it. She was then sued by her colleagues for their share before being sued by the men who tipped her the ticket. That same week, she was kidnapped by her ex-husband and ended up shooting him in the chest when he threatened to kill her. She then spent the next 10 years fighting a legal battle against the IRS, which she eventually won. In 1978, psychologists performed an experiment to compare the happiness levels of lottery winners versus accident victims who became paraplegic. Surprisingly, this study found that over time, the everyday happiness of lottery winners ended up being lower than the happiness of accident victims.
First of all, who saw these two situations and were like, you know what? Let's see the difference. I think the thing with winning a lottery, or the thing with success in general, is, and this is coming from my own personal experience, I'm not rich, I don't have a ton of money, but I consider myself highly successful in the fact that what I do for a living is something that I really enjoy doing, which is mostly on my other channel, which is just skateboarding with my friends. So I kind of won this circumstantial lottery to where what I do for work isn't what I do for work. It's what I would want to be doing anyways. But there's a drive in people to want to chase things. There's a drive to want to have what you can't have. And personally for me, there's not really much that I desire outside of what I'm already doing. So I'm sort of at this weird plateau where I could look up at other things. I could always think more views or more money per year, or find a new category to really blow up in, like me being over on this channel. But none of those things aren't things that I really extremely desire. They're just like, like I'm really complacent with the layout of my life as it is. And I'm doing stuff over here because it's fun, but I'm not over here like grinding away like I need to work for something. And there is something a little bit somber about that from time to time, that I need to remind myself how fortunate I really am and how much I really enjoy this stuff, that kind of snaps me back out of it. But sometimes it's just like, oh man, like I don't really want anything. Have you ever had a part in your life where you feel like you really wanted to want something, but you don't? I think that is something that comes into play for people who won the lottery, because all of us are usually in the world grinding and working hard to just be at a place of comfort. And when it's just given to you to that degree to where you don't have to worry about not only finding time to breathe and be comfortable, but you can kind of just get what you want, and there's nothing that you have to work for, I think that there is a possible chemical depression that comes over your body because you're not seeking out anything or fighting to survive. Like, I think the fighting to survive part of our brain that might be from the hunter-gatherer thing, or just trying not to die in the past however many years of humans' existence, has sort of been replaced by like being successful. And once you're just sort of given this winning ticket of like, yeah, you got it all, like here's money, here's housing, you eat all the food you want, I think that can be kind of depressing. It sort of reminds me of when I was a kid, Reb's Candy was like the holy grail of things to eat. It's this fancy chocolate company that's in Baltimore, Maryland, that we would only really get on holidays, mostly just Christmas, except for my mom would sometimes get them and like hide them in her drawer like a couple times a year. But they were expensive for my family and they weren't common. They were a big deal. And when I got older and I started making money and I got a decent job doing construction, I was like, oh, I can just like go to Baltimore and buy these chocolates for myself. And so I started doing that to where I was getting these chocolates like once a week. And after only about 2 months of doing this, yes, I got chocolates every week, boxes of chocolates every week, and ate them all for 2 months straight. It sort of killed the excitement for it. And I think that's the same thing with having all this money. Like all the things like there's nothing quite like saving up for something and then getting it. And even if it's like not as good as you want it to be, just like the transaction of getting that thing that you want is just such a wash of dopamine. And being given all that money, or being born into money, or anything that takes away the work process to get to where you want to get, doesn't make the thing worthless, but it does take away this extreme sensation that, as corny as it sounds, like the whole like journey, not the destination, like there's a lot of truth to that saying. That's why everyone says it. And if you win the lottery, the journey is just the walk to the gas station and then relatives popping out of the woodwork. So yeah, those are some morbid facts. If you hated this video, just let me know and I won't do it again. If you liked it, maybe I'll do more stuff like this. I'm not the biggest fan of reaction content, but I'm sick. I can't go out and do stuff. And I do want to do more stuff on this channel where it's like me actually doing things. But my fever's down. I'm like almost at a normal temperature now. And my calf's feeling a little bit better, so I should be skating soon. If you're over here for my skateboarding channel and just want to see how I'm doing and where I've been. Yeah, this is what I'm doing. Here's how I've been.